let's start with the drums. So of course the major element in techno is the kick drum. Let's see. So that's the kick drum. It's 2 samples layered. It's here at top kick. Let's see. So it's just like a more low bottom heavy kick and some attack on top to give it a little bit more sharper punch. And then we have some processing here. I use always my racks here, so that's just 2 of the 128s rack where the samples are inside. Then I have some processing on the whole 2 samples. So that you can also see that on the top I have just high passed it, so that on the transient part I don't have all the sub frequencies because I already have it in the other sample. Yeah, then we have some saturation, just to like make it a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, some EQ. Always what I am looking for is in the range from 100 to 300 hertz. Sometimes you always have like kind of muddy frequencies which will clutter up your mix. So I always try to keep them down a little bit, especially because I will add some rumble on top. And here I've also cut it a little bit here in this, like in the punch area, because it was a little bit too much. And then I have here just on top, which was actually doing nothing because the reason is I'm just having a limiter here at the end to make sure if I'm tweaking here my settings that I will not exceed a certain threshold and the kick will get too loud. So I can tweak all the settings here and making sure that I will not go over a certain volume level. What I sometimes do is, especially with kick drums with a very sharp and heavy transient, that I will use a clipper just to clip off the transient a little bit, just 2-3 dB or something, so that I will still have a lot of punch, but kind of keep more headroom when I'm going into my mastering chain. But I have a lot of videos about clipping and limiting, so you might already know that. Okay, then we have some rumble in my newer projects. I'm doing this on the same channel. Back then when I made this project, I had it also on different channels because I can process them and then they will just add up and go to the drums bus. But yeah, it kind of depends. Yeah, if you have it on the same channel, it's easier like to make like processing on the whole kick and rumble group. But yeah, both ways work. But lately I find it a little bit more like just easier to have it on one channel and then tweak it, and then I have just a rack on my kick group where I have like one chain for the dry sound and 2 or 3 other chains for the rumble, top rumble and whatever. But here we have the low rumble. So yeah, what I did is, and what I sometimes do is, I will resample the rumble from the original channel, which was this one, where I had all my racks and my processing, and Then I resample it, and I take because let's just quickly talk about rumble. It's mostly a kind of reverb based or delay based, or both in combination. And the thing with that is that, of course, for example, these delays have a feedback. So if you start on the first kick, the feedback will start to add up, and so the rumble at the beginning, after the first kick, will not sound the same after the 20th kick or something, and that's why I just sample it for a few seconds, and then I will take out the part where I think that it has a good sound and fits good to the kick, and then I will just cut it and make a loop out of that, and then I will use this resampled part because it's like very consistent. It's exactly the same. And for example, if you have the rack here, when you have the kick out for, let's say, 1 bar, and then it comes back, then the rumble sounds different on the first kick after the break. It's a little kind of sometimes weird, but it also depends. Also, another way to fix that is to just have a volume to a utility tool on your rumble, and then you can duck the rumble when there's no kick playing, but you keep the kick playing in the background all the time, so that the rumble is still consistent, but you just automate the gain so that you will not hear it anymore, but it's still there and it's still like consistent. But yeah, depends. This time I went for the resampling method, and I have the sidechain here just to duck out like the first half, and because I already had the kick, which was the kick had already sub frequencies here, and so I added the rumble just at the end. Same goes for the reverb. And yeah, let's play them together. And what you notice is here on the reverb, on the kick reverb channel is, or let's just quickly see what I did here. I'm using the convolution reverb pro from Ableton. Then I just add some overdrive and some amp. If you have some more industrial techno, it actually often works that you don't have to really low pass it. You still can keep the highs because it makes the track a lot really dirty. But for this genre, it's better to cut it and just keep the lows. And then some sidechain at the end as well, but not as heavy as on the lows, because I don't have too much sub frequencies here, because I'm cutting it here, because I have already the low frequencies here in the rumble, and I will just add the top or the like low mids to give it a little bit more space. And what you will also notice is that the reverb rumble here is not mono, and a lot of people they keeping their like rumble completely mono. But I personally think that it gives the track a lot more space if I have like the low mids or mid frequencies in the kick reverb, for example. Here in the reverb rumble, I can have it stereo. You have just to make sure that everything which is in the sub frequencies is mono compatible. That doesn't mean it needs to be mono, it just needs to be mono compatible. And that's what a lot of people always mix up. They say, oh no, my bass needs to be mono. No, not really. It needs to be mono compatible. And the problem is that it's not the same. Yeah, because for example, you can have like a sub which is not mono compatible, and then you just put it in mono and say, yeah, well, it's mono, everything's great now. Well, it probably is maybe not, because if you like have a lot of phase cancellations and stuff, then even if it's mono, and it still sounds shitty, it is shitty. And you can have a like even like low mid or low frequencies. You can also you can have them stereo, but they need to be mono compatible, so that the sound in mono needs to be very good, and then you can do it. But that's also the trick, or what sometimes people just miss it. They will put it in mono and say, yeah, it's great, yeah, it's mono now. What can possibly happen, right? But it's that's not the truth. The truth is it needs to sound good in mono, and if it sounds good in mono, and it's also stereo, then it's still good in mono, right? But if it sounds shitty in mono, it is shitty, yeah? No matter how it is, if it is mono or if it's stereo. And that's my philosophy or my take on this subject. But we can try that out. I have here always on the master bus a monitor control, where I can just have a like here a routing of my keyboard. The dot button here just triggers the mid here, so I can make it mono. So you can see the bass is still pretty consistent. It's still like mono compatible, and but you can really hear that the reverb kind of gets lost because it's stereo, and in mono it's kind of, it goes away a little bit, and that's okay, because actually reverb, sometimes it can be good that some effects will get lost in mono, because otherwise they would clutter up your mix a lot, especially like with a lot of, if you're using a lot of reverb on some synths or something. It can sound a little bit too much in mono, but in stereo it's kind of okay. So if, for example, the volume of the reverb gets reduced a little bit in mono, sometimes that's not bad at all, and it's because then it still sounds like clean and not very muddy in mono. So that's what I do. That's basically no right or wrong. You can do whatever you want, and just do what you think sounds good. Only because some people say, yeah, it has to be mono, it has to be this or that. No, it doesn't. Do whatever you want, and maybe you'll find something new by just experimenting. All right, and let's keep going. Let's go through the drums. I mean, the drums are pretty like standard here, like open hi-hat. I have the open hi-hat here in stereo. Yeah, sometimes I'm trying it. It really depends on the track. Sometimes it works to have them also on the even the open hat on the side. I'm using Haas effect here, as you can see. So a little bit pushing it to the sides. But it really, yeah, mostly I'm doing this with my closed heads or shakers, but on some tracks it also works, because then you have like them also on the sides, and you have other elements playing in the mid. Here I use also my 128 tracks, a little bit of overdrive, get it a bit more crispy, some EQ, cutting out some resonant frequencies. Yeah, then I have the sound shifter plugin here, very old plugin, which I'm just using for automating, and you can see I have some automation here, and what this is for. So you can see the pitch goes down, and I really like that effect. On transition it can be really good, because sometimes it's pretty subtle, but when the pitch goes down, it kind of like leads to an end, or you're like expecting something, and for transitioning it works really well. So that's why I'm using it often in my tracks. Here we have some open, some closed heads. Oops. And some shaker loop here, and all together that this kind of this loop adds a little bit more groove on top, but I just have it here playing in very few spots, so just to keep the track interesting. Then we have of course some rides, like 909 style rides. We have just two patterns here. The one's like offbeat, and it's like a kind of different pattern, just to switch it up a little bit. You can also see that I have the sound pitcher here on, and the pitches the right down here to make the transition a little bit more smoother. Then we have some claps. Yeah, I am not sure if you really want to see all the individual processing. It kind of it's basically the same everywhere. I have just the original sound. I try to get the sound right in the first place, so that I really have something which works, and then I will often just need a just use a EQ and maybe some saturation. That's it. You can see that that the chain is pretty much the same always. It's just an EQ, and on some on drums especially, I've used maybe some transient shaping, just to make it a little bit more punchy. I'm using this very old one from Native Instruments, but it works really well. So I will just add a little bit of tech and remove a little bit of sustain, so it makes it a little bit more sharp and transient heavy. Then I have another clap, which is kind of like placed in between. Let's see. It kind of just keeps the track going, gives a little bit more rhythm and groove, and especially on the part here after 4 bars and 8 bars here, we'll get a kind of a little bit better transitioning. And I'm just using it on some parts on the track, so it's not playing all the time. Then I have some low percussions here, making a little bit more, or make the track a little bit more groovy. Try to I also have a bass pattern like which we'll see later with the same rhythm, I think. So I always have some kind of percussions playing in the like low mid area to give the track a little bit more rhythm. It's not very like noticeable in the complete track. It's pretty subtle, but it kind of gives like the track a certain rhythm or groove, and especially on big speakers, you will kind of notice it like subconsciously, and that's why I'm always using it, because I think it will like make the track a little bit less static, because like if we have a basic 4 on the floor kick drum pattern, just some offbeat hi-hats and like some 16th shakers or closed hats, and that's it. It's kind of like a little bit boring, and that's what I do to keep it a little bit more dynamic. Then we have some just reversed cymbals here. I'm using that for the snare and the clap. And it kind of like on the second clap, on the fourth clap, in snare combination hit, it will kind of transition it a little bit into it. So have your a kind of pre clap snare, and you see on the first it's a little bit more quieter than on the second one, and then it just repeats, and it will kind of gives it a little bit more flow. And yeah, so like always on the second hit, you have like the transitioning into it, gives it a little bit more groove, but on the overall track it's like not really noticeable, but still like subtle things like that can make the difference, so just be aware of that. Then we have a simple crash sound. Yeah, and not too much to say. This just for transitioning effect. You can see that I'm using it here on the parts where we have a transition here into the breaks or the drops, just to tell the listener, hey, something is happening right now. On the overall drum bass, I'm using pretty much always the same chain. I'm using the decapitator to saturate it a little bit more. Drum bass, also a great plugin. Some EQ, which sometimes does actually nothing at all, but let's take a look at it. And then some imaging. Let's see. You see, the EQ doesn't do anything at all. It just makes sure that there are no frequencies in the low area, because we will cover that all with the kick group, and but sometimes it's not necessary at all. And here I have my sidechain, which just sidechain the drum bass group here to the kick. We have a multi-band sidechain here. Where we see I have the dry wet set up differently in the different bands, because here I'm cutting the lows with 100%, but the mid and the highs a little bit less, and you can see also it's a lot shorter, and because the high frequencies and the mid frequencies in the drum signals don't take up too much space, so I've just cut off the very first part so that the kick transient comes through completely, but then I don't have to sidechain then completely, and that's why I use multiband sidechain a lot. Because depending on the frequency content, I need more or less sidechain. Especially in the low frequencies, I'll need a lot of sidechain because the kick takes up all the space already. But on the higher frequencies, I don't have to cut it that sharp, so I still get more of these frequencies coming through, and this way it sounds a little bit more transparent, so that sidechain is not pumping as hard. I mean, some genres that may be the way you want to go for, but here I kind of try to keep it a little bit more transparent, so the kick still has its place and is the main element, but the elements are pretty close around and still have enough space to breathe. and that's why I use multiband sidechain. And as we talked here, the ghost sidechain, you can see that I have a MIDI trigger set up here, so it will trigger the sidechain on the MIDI signal. All right, let's see the whole group. Yeah, that's the drum group. Here I have some processing on top. I will go quickly through it. It's just some additional saturation and compression here for just like the dry chain and the wet chain. The wet chain is like completely destroyed with which is called the Monster, and that's like a kind of extreme version of an 1176 compressor. You can see the attacks. It's the fastest time and release at the attack is exactly the fastest, and release as well. So it kind of smashes the whole group together really like dense sound. We can check it out. So it might like completely really crush it together, and that will add this signal just a little bit into the chain, so that we get a little bit more sustain and like body into the group. It's subtle, yeah. So you maybe probably don't notice a difference at all, but it gives it a little bit more, like it's a little bit more dense. And then I'll have my favorite drum compressor, which is the API 2500. I wish there would be a version also from other companies. I don't know, there are not that much around. I know it is, I think that there's also one from UAD, but for example from Slate Digital, I'm not aware that they have a version out there, because I would really love to use it, for example here in this rack. But I'm using the Waves version here, so the settings are pretty much always the same. It's like the slowest attack, 30 milliseconds, ratio at 4, release pretty fast. Lately I'm using a little bit of, especially for tracks like in like 128, 206, 130. I use a release of like 100 milliseconds, sometimes maybe even 200 milliseconds, because I think the flow's a little bit better. Here I use 50 milliseconds, which is very like short, so it like clamps down on the after the kick hit, which we can see in the view meter. I would personally use probably 100 milliseconds nowadays, but anyway, it's not that huge like difference. And this, you can hear it a little. It's kind of like what people call like glue. It like takes all the individual elements and like puts it a little bit more together, because here you can see in the view meter that on every kick hit it like ducks the sound a little bit, so like it kind of enhances like the kick pattern or the groove of the kick together with the other elements, and that's what helps a little bit to like get some glue, yeah. And here I'm using also the punctuate here. I'm just putting it here down on 8 bits. That would be, don't take up a lot of CPU, and just use very little here. Just to add some like punch to the drums. It's also subtle. It's just like adds a little bit more transient, and then I will throw the transients into my clipper. Here in this project I used the newfangled saturate, but lately I like the standard clip more on like drums. It's a little bit more aggressive, and it's not as clean as the newfangled, but still it's harder. because it's not that clean. But the newfangled is like a really clean one, and you can see that I'm only clipping like half a dB, maybe on some parts where we have overlapping some sounds, maybe 1 dB or something. You can sometimes go harder. You can also like clip 2 or 3 dB, and it's not really noticeable. And what I made, I made a rack here for all my clipping. I have a rack with like here this check knob. And what this does here, and what all these plugins here are for, that they just have a second chain here, here is the inverted phase. So this is just a mid-side clipper, so it's a little bit more complicated as well, because we have a mid channel and a side channel here, and you can see the side channel is unprocessed and only the clipping is on the mid channel. Yeah? And you might say, hey, why are you only clipping the mid channel and not the side channel? Well, if you try it out, clipping on the side signal is a lot more noticeable than clipping the mid channel, where you have, for example, all the time the kick playing. So because just the kick, because it's so loud and in the front, it will just overpower the clipping and you will not hear it anymore. So that's why I'm using this trick to clip more the mid channel than the side channel, because on the side channel a clipping can get noticeable very quickly. And that's what I do, because I found out that the clipping on the mid channel is a lot harder to hear, because the kick will just be the like main element, and we will not hear the clipping anymore. And that's why I do it. Depends on the sounds. Sometimes you can just clip the whole, but on some it's like better to clip just the mid signal, and especially here on the drums we have the, like on the mid signal it's the most energy, so it's not really that heavy. But what I wanted to talk about is that this check function here, we have like here this clipping chain, and here they have just an inverted phase chain. It has just a dry signal, but the phase inverted. What will actually happen is that if you think about it, on the first channel, on the first chain, you have the clipped signal, and on the other one you have the dry signal with phase inverted. So it will cancel out the original signal, and what will be left is just like the signal which will get introduced by the clipping, and so you can hear just what the clipping adds, and this gives you a good direction if it's too much or not. Now, let's see. Just want to mention that unfortunately, because of all my Compressor routing, if I do that, you can still hear the return channels, so I have to switch them off. You can still hear a little bit of the dry signal. Not sure why it's like that, but if you like listening on this like crackle like kind of sound, that's actually what the clipping is introducing. It's really quiet, but all this like kind of crackling, that's what the clipping adds. But as I said, if you have it just on the mono signal, it's pretty unnoticeable. Let's see it in action here. So basically there's no difference. What I will do is that mostly I will just cut like 1 or maybe 2 dB, because it will just give my final limiters 1 or 2 dB less to work on, and so I'll try to keep my bus groups like compact and already a little bit limited or clipped, to just save some headroom for later.